It's Demetris and a Splash of Fanta on this Thursday, January the 7th, 2021. John Fanta here in Hoboken, New Jersey. Demetris Nichols in Syracuse, where they've got a big game on Saturday.
They do. The rival, Georgetown. Got to get it done.
We'll talk some Vesta Hoya Orange memories coming up later in the show. And we've got ESPN Seth Greenberg on. So you're not going to want to miss this. A conversation with one of the best analysts in the game. You see Seth in studio every night on ESPN. He'll give us his takes, his observations from a season unlike any other in college basketball. Mm-hmm. Let's start with this. The Big Ten, we've talked plenty about the Big Ten. They're the best conference in America. Mm-hmm. And they're projected to potentially get 10 teams in the NCAA tournament. If you look at bracketologies across the country right now, Joe Lunardi at ESPN, Mike DeCourcy at Fox, and others, the conference behind the Big Ten is a conference that does not have a national championship caliber team. Mm-hmm. There's not a top 10 team in this league, but they have a lot of teams that are jammed in together. And that is the ACC with potentially 8 or 9 NCAA tournament teams. Not sure what to exactly make of that, Demetrius, but what are you seeing when you think about the ACC right now? And if there's a team that stands out to you that perhaps I'm wrong on when I say I don't think that there's a national championship team in this league,
well,
man.
You know what? They're slow. You know, like this league right now, as of right now, with all the stuff that's going on, it's slow. From the canceled games, postponed games, teams haven't even – there's teams in the ACC that haven't played 2 or 3 games yet in that conference. In the beginning of the season, we had 4 ranked teams. You had Duke top 10. You had Florida State top 20. North Carolina was supposed to be led by Garrison Brooks, and Virginia was top 5. Now, 3 of those teams are in the bottom of the top 25, with 2 of them ranked, VTech and Clemson. So it's, you know, they haven't played enough games, and it's just there's no rhythm, there's no consistency. And I think it's affecting players and coaches. So we can't really gauge who's good and who's not good. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Here's my thought process here. Number one, the best story in this league is unquestionable. Mm-hmm. I mean, I firmly believe this because this is one team. Clemson is fantastic in how they've been able to put this together. Credit to Brad Brownell. He's 9-1 on the season. And guess what? When everybody talks about the ACC, they talk about Virginia.
Duke, North Carolina.
They talk about Virginia as the best defensive team in America. Mm-hmm. Oh, they defend as well as anybody. They're so good. They're going to make you play a rock fight. Yeah. Nobody could beat them defensively. Guess what? The team that's KenPom number 1 defensively, mm-hmm. Clemson is number 1 in defensive adjusted efficiency rating. Mm-hmm. The Tigers are not a team that's necessarily flashy. They don't have a superstar. They don't have someone who's scoring 17, 18 points per game. They have a senior in Amir Sims, a junior in Nick Honor who came off the bench the other night in their win over NC State against a good NC State team with Funderburk and a solid, well-coached team in Kevin Keith's squad. They'll make the NCAA tournament. Clemson's been a surprise in this conference. They're the biggest surprise. We're going to find out how good they are in the next 3 games. They're at North Carolina this weekend. They're at Syracuse next week. Critical game for both teams. And then they're home to Virginia. I love what I've seen from the Tigers thus far. I think it's the best story in this league.
I agree with you because no one had them in the top 25. And actually, Clemson has played the most games in the league thus far. They're on their 11th game. And it seems like it's paying off. They have a great non-conference schedule. They won their first 5 games. They're consistent, and they are playing with rhythm. You can tell that they don't really take days off. They play hard. They defend. They know who they are, and they're veteran guards like Amiri Sims. They're a veteran team. Sophomore Dars, who's really, really, really good. I think he's really going to be special for them in the years to come. But how do I rank this league? I can't. It's so unpredictable. Duke barely beat a 0-4 Boston College. Thank God for Wendell Moore's turnaround jumper. Virginia lost to Louisville. Syracuse blew an 18-point lead versus Pitt. Trying to find a rhythm is so important in college basketball and everything. It's still one of the most competitive leagues. The ACC fans expect the Duke and North Carolinas to always be at the top, but those teams are young, and the teams that are successful, not just in the ACC, but in all of college basketball, all the teams are the teams that have experience and depth.
Yeah. With North Carolina, I cannot figure them out at all. I mean, on the offensive end of the floor, they can just be really sloppy at times. I was just taking a look at kind of what they've been able to do recently, and they had 20 turnovers.
Yeah.
20 turnovers against Miami, who I don't think is all that good.
No.
You turn the ball over 20 times. What happened to R.J. Davis? I mean, this team's not getting enough contributions from their backcourt. You can only do so much if you rebound the basketball. Rebounding the basketball and defending is going to keep you in a game. But we say it all the time. Like, at a certain point, you have got to have someone in your backcourt. And I say backcourt because it's the point. You got to have somebody will you. You got to have somebody – look at around this league a little bit. And, like, I look at Virginia. Virginia comes back in their last game against Wake Forest, and they come back because Reese Beekman, the 6'3" guard, just a freshman, had a breakout performance. Virginia's been looking for somebody to do something in the scoring column and in the backcourt. It's always the biggest thing that holds them back. Yeah. Duke has a favorable schedule here coming up. I was taking a look at it, and Duke is going to play, and they're going to play Wake Forest. They're going to play at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, I think, might be a little bit overrated from their start of the year. They had a good start to the year. I don't know if they're as good as that ranking necessarily. And then Duke's going to be at Pittsburgh. Yeah. So Duke's next 3 games, look, if this team's going to find a rhythm, this is the next 3-game window to do it in. But they don't – Mike Krzyzewski was quarantining against Boston College. It makes a difference. Wendell Moore is going to have to be as good as he was last night for this team to break out. The Blue Devils just come off to me like a team that doesn't really know who they are. And when you are not connected in this sport, particularly on the defensive end of the floor, like Illinois just bulldozed past them. Michigan State in transition, bulldozed past them. The Boston College game last night was in the 80s. Duke is not playing together defensively. It's hard to win in this sport when you don't do that.
And it's hard to win when you don't have consistency, when you can't practice every day, when you have canceled games. And these guys are young, and the only way you could get better is with experience. You get out on the floor and make mistakes and learn from your mistakes, but they can't do that because they've only played about 5 or 6 games. But back to North Carolina, they're playing like they played last year. We all thought that Garrison Brooks was going
that bad, because that team really struggled.
Listen, Garrison Brooks is not playing like the ACC first team like everyone predicted. And he was second option last year, and he's playing like the second option this year. And he's the type of guy that needs a point guard or a guard that can get in the lane, give him nice touches so he can finish, catch lobs. But they're young. The PG position, like you said, Caleb Love and R.J. Davis are 2 freshmen. You can't put all that pressure on those 2 guys. Caleb Love, he had a good game last game. I think he had like 4 or 5 threes, but he's still shooting 17% from the 3-point line. I like Delron Sharp. I think he's going to be really, really good. And the big guy, the 7-footer, Kessler, is going to be really good. So I think North Carolina they are in that rebuilding stage of trying to get better. I think they're going to be good next year and the years to come. But as of right now, They don't have a true point guard, and their main player is playing like the second best player, and that's why they have struggled thus far.
So here's the team that intrigues me in this league the most. I say it, and on this podcast, I said it earlier. Like, I don't think that the ACC has a team this year that says to me national championship. Again, you could counter and say to me, what about Duke? What about Carolina? But I just don't think that these Blue Bloods are as equipped as other years to be that type of team. It's just my take in the here and now. Virginia can evolve. They evolve as the season goes on. We know that they've got some good, well-rounded pieces. Don't let a loss to Gonzaga totally let you define who Virginia is.
Mm-hmm. Because they defend.
Go ahead.
So because they defend. And if you can defend at a high level, you always have a chance to play. They just haven't been consistent enough to put their defensive principles along with their offensive skill. They haven't really meshed that way and been consistent at that point. But if they get hot in February,
sure,
early March, they can be really, really dangerous because we've seen spurts of them offensively, how good they can be when they play both ends of the floor at a high level.
Yeah, and here's the thing. You can have balance in your conference, and this league has good teams.
Great teams. 15 teams.
Good teams. Good teams. I don't know if there is a great team in this league right now. We don't know the answer to that question. But I think that Louisville might be a team in this conference that's not getting enough credit.
Yeah.
They've got a backcourt in David Johnson, a sophomore who's taken the next step, Carly Jones, a freshman who I love, that played together. They meshed well in the win over Virginia Tech. If they can get Sam Williamson going, they have Jalen Withers, who's coming off a 16-12 performance. Louisville's not deep, but Chris Mack's teams defend. Again, another team that just grinds you out. Like, they got off to a bad start against Virginia Tech. They willed their way back. They're a well-coached team. Chris Mack is stone cold. He's been a great addition to this league at Louisville. Louisville's won 4 in a row. They don't necessarily play pretty. They barely beat Kentucky, but they're 8-1. You are what your record says you are. You're 8-1. You beat Virginia. You beat Virginia Tech, and now you got Georgia Tech coming up, at Wake Forest, at Miami. This team should win 7 in a row and gear up for a game against Florida State on January the 18th.
They should. And when I watch this team now, in the first 2 or 3 weeks, it's a totally different team because I remember talking on the show, I think episode 2 or 3, where we were talking about Louisville. What is their identity? Who's going to be their leader? And you saw when I watched a couple of the games, guys were disconnected. Guys weren't talking. Guys weren't huddling up at the free throw line trying to get some type of flow, some type of bond. And now you see these guys doing that because they see and they respect and they believe in the formula. And I think that's giving them a lot of confidence. And that's why they were able to come back and beat V-Tech with that experience and knowing that they have to get better every single day. And at the end of the day, even though they're not ranked anymore, they know it's kind of still early. You know, the most important time of the season is these next 3 months, January, February, and March. And it seems like they got that second win, and they're looking pretty good.
All right, let's ask Seth Greenberg about this. We welcomed in the ESPN analyst to break down all things college basketball. It's great to have ESPN college basketball analyst, the coach, Seth Greenberg, joining us on Demetris and a Splash of Fanta. And, Coach, since my co-host, played for the Orange, I'm just curious if you got a great Jim Boeheim story, a tale that comes to mind off the top.
Well, actually, I do have a Jim. Yeah, Jim, we're gonna make some shot. Yeah, it's a thing. Really, my best Jim Boeheim story is when he was an assistant coach. He came to recruit my brother Brad when he was Roy Danforth's assistant. Came to Plainview, Long Island, and that's back in the Manly days, obviously a long time ago. And I just remember Coach Boeheim sitting down at our kitchen table, and he pulled out the schedule back in the day. That's pre-Big East. And he literally went down the schedule. He goes, and that's a win, that's a win, that's a win, that's a win. At worst, we're going to win 20 games. And we're going to be in the NIT and, probably be in the NCAA tournament. And, it was about the way it was. And I think the great thing about Jim is you always know where you stand. I have so much admiration for him and what he's done and how he's done it. And, Adrian Autry was my former assistant, who's obviously up there right now. And, I was at Pitt when they recruited Pearl Washington. I still remember going into the Paramount and where the boys and girls played their games, and the games weren't games, they were events. But, the biggest thing with Coach Boeheim is how he treats others. And, I think that's the thing, what he's done in his community. I mean, to think about what Jim and Julie have done in that Syracuse community and the impact they've had, forget about winning games, forget about guys like Demetris who have gone on and come back and been successful and are impacting the community. But the lives they've changed outside of basketball, I think to me, that's, one of Jim's greatest contribution. You can have the 1,000 wins, you can have the championship, you can have the Carmelo Center, you can have everything he's done, but it's the legacy that he leaves behind by the players like Demetris that make Jim's legacy so special.
Coach, I definitely agree. You can't mention Syracuse without saying Jim Boeheim. I think he represents the whole upstate New York, the state of New York. So, but let's talk about some basketball. Who's been your favorite team thus far?
It's interesting because it's an ebb and flow depending on the week.
Yeah.
Like Gonzaga is the most fun team to watch. I mean, just the way they play, the pace in which they play, the flow in which they play, their spacing, the number of floor gamers they have on the floor, the number of playmakers, shot makers. Corey Kispert looking like, Duncan Robinson knocking down jumpers. Jalen Suggs looking like Jason Kidd coming off ball screens and dropping dimes. That bounce pass he threw in transition the other day was a joke. It was incredible. The team that is growing on me, though, now, if you eliminate them and you eliminate Baylor's guard play and how hard they play defensively, is Michigan. Because Michigan, Juwan Howard's doing an amazing job. Congratulations to Phil Martelli, who just was going to be honored as a guardian of the game by the NABC. But Hunter Dickinson is different than anyone else. He's a post guy that actually knows he's a post guy. He's not a post guy that thinks he's a point guard or a small forward who wants to step out and shoot threes. He goes right down to the block. He says, I'm going to catch it here. I'm going to get to this spot, and I'm going to score it. And he does that. He takes up space. He's active defensively. And for a freshman, he's got a little bit of an edge to him. He's got a little bit like when they went back to that Maryland game, all right, like freshmen don't talk smack in the Big Ten. I mean, and he had a little edge to him, but it's not just him. Mike Smith, the transfer from Columbia, has been terrific. I love his floor game. Franz Wagner at 6'9", 6'10", whatever he is, he can initiate your break off a defensive rebound. He's a terrific passer. He can make enough shots to keep you honest. He's got a high basketball IQ. Isaiah Livers does what he does. I think the interesting thing is I watched Juwan, and it's a little bit of an NBA mentality because he's done a great job of getting those guys to play to their strengths. And Demetris, in college basketball, everyone wants to be someone else. They don't understand the NBA is a league of role players. Yeah. And what Juwan's convinced these guys is show people what you can do. Don't show people what you can't do.
Exactly.
By doing that, they play beautiful basketball. I mean, they're a fun team to watch. So this week's team, it could change. Last week I was kind of intrigued by Tennessee. I think they have some offensive deficiencies. You need shot makers. They have some floor gamers. They're young. I like Jaden Springer, but Michigan has really jumped out at me as I've dug into them this week.
Yeah. And like when you have a coach that's played over 15 years in the NBA that knows what it takes to get to the next level, you have players that trust, hey, you want to make it to the big leagues, you do X, Y, and Z, and you be successful. So, I mean, I really –
And he worked for – he worked for Spo and Pat Riley, or worked with Spo and Pat Riley. Like, people got to understand. See, people don't understand the NBA guys, the coaches and administrators. They work so hard. And when you work for Spo and Riley, right, I mean, like, you're understanding, like, there are no days off now. Forget about no days off. There are no days off when you're working in those organizations. Those are championship cultures and organizations.
In our opening segment today, we talked ACC, trying to figure out what exactly this league is. No team in the top 10, no team in the top 15 from this conference. And the thought is there a national championship team? But again, a season evolves. What do you make of this league? Because by the same token, Coach, bracketology projections, any of those projections, metrics suggest there could be 8, 9 NCAA tournament teams.
Yeah, I think Florida State's the one team that could separate themselves. You never count out Virginia because of style play. You own the tempo and rhythm of the game. Virginia concerns me because they don't have Diakite and Braxton Key. Diakite made up for a lot of defensive mistakes. He could switch, he could guard ball screens, he could block shots. To me, he was underappreciated in terms, not by the coaching staff, but I'm just by fans, by all the things that impacted winning. Same thing with Braxton Key, who from his position could really rebound the ball. If Virginia's relying on Kihei Clark to score, then Virginia can only be so good. I mean, because short clock with the ball's in his hands as a little guard, getting in the lane, that's not Ty Jerome. All right, so he's going to have a hard time. They got to figure that through. Sam Harris is a part of it. Florida State, on the other hand, I love the Scotty Barnes experiment at a 6'9" point guard. It's a transition from power forward to point guard. It's hard. The responsibility's hard. Talking to Leonard, they think he's a mixture of Magic Johnson and Scottie Pippen. That's pretty good. So you've got him. And I think that that Copa Visa has gotten better in the front court. MJ Walker's making more shots. They still got to get an understanding of having that toughness. They got to take better care of the basketball. But I think Virginia and Florida State are the two that can emerge. I do like NC State. I like NC State. I like Daniels. I like that when Funderburk is being aggressive around the basket. I like Manny Bates' ability to block shots. I'd like to see a little bit more of Helms. But I do like them. I do like their style of play in the NCAA tournament, especially in a COVID year where practice time is limited. I mean, let's face it. The two things, Demetris, you know this, players and coaches, consistency and routine.
Habits. And
we're in a year with no consistency and very little routine. We're in a year where personal relationships with your players is more difficult. If you don't see your players in practice, the only other time you're going to see them in the Zoom. Exactly. So, I mean, it's interesting. But I think Florida State is a team that can emerge. I think that NC State is a team that can emerge because their style of play makes it harder to prepare for. And I do think they're going to get better. And I'm a big Kevin Keats fan. And then Clemson's been very good.
What about Clemson?
Yeah, Clemson's good. I mean, Amir Sims is a tough matchup. There's no doubt about it. I mean, when you think about, 6'8", 6'9", you can play them all over the floor. That becomes a problem. Let's put it that way. That becomes a problem. And then, Nick Honor, the kid from Fordham, he's a guard that they haven't had. And I like Dawes and I like that, but Honor's a guard that he's got a little shake to his game. Like he can just go get a shot. And he's not afraid to take that shot. And he was a volume scorer for Fordham. So he's playing in the ACC. He just expects to score. He's still, he thinks he's still breaking down like, Richmond or someone. So, I mean, they defend, they turn you over, but it's more in the half court. I think Sims is a hard matchup. I do like this Clemson team.
Yeah, and they're on their 11th game. And Coach, talk about the importance of practicing every single day, getting that rhythm and playing every 2 days. It just makes everything easier. And I think that's why they've been successful in the ACC, because they've played most of the games.
Yep. Team. First of all, veteran teams, huge advantage because they've dealt with adversity. They've dealt with uncertainty, and no one's seen uncertainty like we've seen obviously with the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Like a veteran team, if you get shut down for 10 days, when you come back, you're not going to have the same slippage as a team that's relying on freshmen and sophomores. That's just the way to freshmen, basically. All right. A veteran team, when you come out of quarantine, all right, they're going to understand that, while they're in quarantine, figure out a way to get conditioning, take care of their bodies, eat right, do all those other things. And they have the ability coming out of it, if they have to play 3 days later, they can process a scouting report because they're juniors and seniors. They've seen those teams. They understand those systems. They have a huge advantage, just a huge advantage. Look, we're seeing it. Like, look what's going on with Kentucky. Now, they don't have a guy in their team playing that put on a Kentucky uniform a year ago. Look at North Carolina playing those two freshman guards. John Calipari is playing like 5 dudes that never played. And they don't understand how hard you got to play, the decisions you got to make, good shot, bad shot, risk-reward passes, trying to make passes into short, small windows. Like, I was at a Michigan State practice, Cassius Whitson's freshman year. I used to go up there for a couple of days watching practice. Tom's a really good friend. And so I'm watching him practice, and Cassius makes 2 turnovers in a row. He's trying to fit the ball in like a really tight window. And Tom walks by a little bit frustrated. And I said, look, he's got to understand he's like a quarterback. But see, in high school and a quarterback, you're trying to throw that thing. And you know what? Wherever you throw it, the guy who's closing on the ball can't make a play. I said, Cassius has got to understand that the length and the athleticism that he's playing against now is different. So those windows are smaller. So you risk and reward. So, of course, only as Tom goes, you tell him. So the next thing I know, I'm sitting there just observing practice. Here's Cassius Winston, someone I never met before in my life, sitting next to me. And, and since that point, I've gotten to fairly good friends with him and close with him, respect him, and watch his game grow, which is really cool. But I think that, that's the transition that guys have to make. You look at these Carolina guards, they don't understand good shot, bad shot, risk, reward. And then Carolina doesn't have a guy to advance past the ball too, like yourself maybe, who could just go make a play and score a bucket. I mean, like the guys that I played against when I was in the ACC, that hit-ahead pass, that advanced pass, all right, that guy could score, he could post feed, but because he could score, he could post feed. Now if that guy can't score, court shrinks, harder to stick it in there, hitting the trail pass in the break, wings shrink, harder to stick it in there. They're not getting anything out of transition game. So, I think, young players, man, it's hard to win with. So I'm all in on these veteran teams.
Me too. I love the guys that stayed 3-4 years because it prepares them mentally, physically, not just in college, but for the next level. They're ready to play. So, so.
Look at the recent national champions. And I think to your point, in a pandemic season, how do these teams handle it? There might not be a more interesting case than Villanova just because they were on a pause after Christmas. Jay Wright test positive for COVID. Now they come back. They practice one day. They get 2 players positive, and now they're back in hotel rooms, and will be back in action after going nearly a month. But Villanova does not have a freshman on their roster. This is all older players who have returned. With the exception of Sadiq Bey, they pretty much brought their whole group back. That said, I'm intrigued, Seth, to see how they come out of this.
Yeah, I mean, and Caleb Daniels, another mature player to transfer from Tulane. The hardest thing is the conditioning. And then, you've been away that long. There's one thing, it's almost like early in the season when you get those 4 or 6 weeks of practice, because you had those, you either played exhibition games or scrimmages against someone else, those secret close scrimmages that are not so secret, you have an opportunity to raise your temperature. Well, for a month now, Villanova hasn't raised their temperature. So as mature as they are, and as good as Jeremiah Robinson-Earl is in terms of he can defend anyone on the floor, and as good and tough as Colin Gillespie's and Justin Moore and Jermaine Samuels, all those guys, you get into a game, and now all of a sudden your game temperature's got to rise, and you got to play and react and cite things as opposed to basically playing against each other, and you got to digest scouting report. There'll be a curve. There'll be slippage. It won't be maybe as great as a young team, but you can't help it. Their culture's so good. Their trust is so good. They hang on every word that Jay gives them. They buy into each other. I'm sure while they're in quarantine, they're getting calls. Villanova is a little bit like the old days of Miami football. They play for those who played before. And what I mean by that is there's a pressure from the guys that played before you on, this is who we are, and this is how we win, this is how we carry ourselves, this is how we compete, this is how we play. And, when I look at Villanova, it will be difficult, but if any team can do that, I think it's them because of their culture, the quality of person they have in their program, the expectation, and the leadership. And it's, a player-coach team is much better than a led team is much better than a coach-led team. And they've got strong leadership in their locker room. The hardest thing goes because those kids are in these hotels by themselves. The hardest thing is how do you put your hands on each other to stay connected?
And that's the point of having those veteran guys, those seniors and juniors. Well, let's stay in the Big East. How real is Creighton? They're top 10 right now. What are your thoughts on this Creighton team? Are they a top 10 team?
Here's the deal. People think of Creighton and they think, fa la la la, they're flowing up, running down the court, boom, they're knocking down threes. They got some dog in them.
They do.
That's the thing that people don't understand. They're an elite offensive team. They play with great spacing. They run good stuff. They play off of concepts. They have great flow. All that stuff is great. They will punch you in your face. Yep. All right? I mean, Denzel Mahoney, he ain't backing down to anyone. Damian Jefferson, he's not backing down to anyone. Jones, Zagorowski, Bishop. Those guys, not only are they skilled, but they got some dog in them. And I mean dog in a good way. I mean, they got a little junkyard dog toughness to them. So I think that they're really good. I think that, obviously maybe one more physical, big front court player away from being in my tier one. So I think they're really good. And I think that the perception of them is one thing. And as a coach, and speaking to coaches in the league, their perception is they're a bunch of blankers.
Nah, they're tough, man. They play hard.
They are.
They're not going to back down. They take defensive assignments personally, and they can kill you with breaking you down one-on-one or the pick and pop game where they have those options. So
there's another team in that league that has that. Well, there's a lot of teams in that league. I think the third best league in college basketball is Big East. I think it's Big 10, the Big 12, and then the Big East. UConn, Danny Hurley has got them with a hard outer shell. Now, they have a guy that no one talks about. Like I say Texas, no one talks about Jericho Sims. Jericho Sims is the unsung hero of Texas. All right, he's a front court guy that defends everything that's thrown at him. He can defend and switch on the perimeter, come back and rebound. UConn's got Isaiah Whaley. Like that dude, I remember when he first came to UConn, I'd go watch them practice, and he was like a throw-in. Like he's just got a toughness about him. He's got an activity about him. He's a great lesson that if you just stick it out and you continue to work, if you have talent, eventually you're going to get your chance and then you're going to be ready. Because he is a terrific player. Book is Book. I mean, he can drop 40 on Creighton. He only had 60 the other night. They beat Marquette in that comeback. Now think about that. All right. They did that because they have a toughness about him. Obviously, Tyler Polley's knocking down jumpers, and the stuff that Dan runs for him, like a big shot was the corner three he made towards the end of the game after they got back in that run. They made that run without Bouknight. Bouknight had 6 points in the first half. Yeah. I don't think he scored in the second half. But they ran a stagger play where Book curled it, and then on his curl, I call it pacer action, he actually brush blocked Polley's man. Polley popped to the corner, and they knocked down a three. Like they run great stuff. All right. They move the defense. And then on the other end, they compete. Dan's done a terrific job with them. They're old school Big East tough. And I think that it's great because 4 years ago we were doing the Jimmy V Classic. I think it was Danny's first year. And I went on TV and said, I know it's not very popular, but UConn belongs back in the Big East, and they want to do it the right way. All right, nothing against the American Conference, but people at Connecticut, recruits in the Northeastern corridor, can't get excited about Tulane and East Carolina and Houston and Wichita State. As good as those teams are, it's just not real. You put them back in the Big East, and they'll get back to being, UConn, and that's what's happened.
Coach,
Well, I had to say this. You've talked about Demetris' skill set, and you were talking about that stagger play. I was just going to say, I could be a good screener.
There you go.
Running for Demetris, you know what you would be? You'd be a guy spotted up on the other side because I wouldn't want you to screw the thing up and maybe even have a chance of someone throwing you the ball in the curl.
Oh, man.
I don't think John, we're not throwing you any pocket passes.
But you're still a piece of the puzzle, though.
Yeah.
Passion's important. Last one here, Coach, before we let you go. NCAA tournament in Indiana. What do you make of this move?
I think it's great. I really think it's great. You think about just, Indiana in general. They embrace basketball. You can have great historic facilities you're going to be playing games in, which is great. I know the NCAA is evil empire, but the NCAA being right there, obviously they have an infrastructure that's there. It's a tremendous destination where you can have a limited access isolation environment, which is going to be in terms of protocol, keeping it in one site where you're not going state to state where different protocols is terrific. Look, it's going to be different. You know, look, the world is different, guys. I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean, it's not just college basketball. I mean, we talk about how difficult it is for these young people, and it is terribly difficult. I'll tell you what's difficult. Being a single mom, working from home, and homeschooling your kids. That's difficult. You know, losing your job and worrying about being evicted and not having food to feed your family, all right, and waiting in a car for the first time in your life to get assistance, that's difficult. The world that we live in a pandemic and in everything that's going on in society, that's difficult. Are we uncomfortable? Do I feel for all these players? No doubt about it. I mean, the idea of being quarantined multiple times and the isolation, no doubt about it. But they're getting world-class medical care. They're being tested every single day. God forbid someone gets sick. They're not waiting in the emergency room. All right. You know, if a Syracuse player gets sick, all right, he immediately is seeing the team doctor, who's then going to put him in world-class medical healthcare environment. So I understand how hard it is. And I think the sacrifices that so many people are making to enable us to have that NCAA tournament, which, let's face it, let me ask you guys. You know, everyone says, well, maybe we shouldn't be playing. Demetris, if they weren't playing while you played and they said the season's over, and the season's over, what would you be doing 2 days from then? Where would you be?
I'll be in the gym doing something, whether it's ball handling, shooting, but basketball after academics is the most important thing in that time as a college athlete. So you come to school.
You wouldn't have been in a safe environment, though. You wouldn't have the testing. You wouldn't have the medical care. You wouldn't have all the support systems that you would have. But you'd still be playing ball, right?
Playing. Still find a way to get to the gym, whether it's outside or inside, whatever. You still try to find a way to get. But, you know, like I feel bad for the juniors and the seniors, you know, guys who are on that edge who could possibly make it to the big leagues, but maybe now they can't because they haven't played enough games or haven't played more consistent. So it's just, you know, like it's tough. But the good thing about sports and college basketball, it gives us 2 hours to get away from the world and just really enjoy some entertainment and really come together and talk as friends and family and try to get away from the road. So thank God that we are playing some type of college basketball.
And the other thing is the rest of the world can learn a lot from, I'll leave you with two things. Number one is the rest of the world can learn a lot from our locker rooms. But you know what? Our locker rooms are built on respect. Our locker rooms are built on trust. Our locker rooms don't see race. Our locker rooms, you know what? Guys care about each other and love each other. And they all, you know, a lot of times the guys come from all different backgrounds. Right. And you know what? I mean, if the rest of the world could look and get inside our locker rooms and say, this is what our country needs to look like, we'd be in a better place. And lastly, I just do, because we didn't talk about it, the Big Ten is the best coached, the best scouted, the most mature, the toughest league in college basketball. But all that other stuff's a lot more important than that, because our world has issues. And like we said, we can learn from sport, and the sport's a great release. I think one of the best things we can learn from sport is the respect people have within their locker rooms and on their coaching staffs, because that's bigger than basketball.
Great talk, Coach.
Seth Greenberg, catch him on ESPN all season long. Coach, we appreciate the time today. Just great perspective. Thanks.
Is it just a touch of Fanta?
a splash. It's a
splash. A splash.
Like a nice cocktail for you.
All right, my wife likes the tequila with a splash of Fresca, but it didn't work well for the show.
We could all use one right about now. Thanks,
you
Coach.
guys be safe.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks again to Seth Greenberg for joining us on the show. Let's get to some weekly honors here on Demetris and a Splash of Fanta. We call them nickel dimers. Okay. Team of the week is
Texas. I like Texas. They've shown that they can play. They're 9-1. They've shown that they can blow teams out. They can win close games, and they can play individual defense, and they have great team defense. They have a three-headed monster and Matt Coleman, Coney Ramsey, and Andrew Jones. And when you have guys like those three guys that can get to the paint and get to the free throw line, bring up the ball, those guys can explode any given night. And I think that's the key to their success. Obviously, Greg Brown, the freshman, Tay Jones, Brooke Cunningham are, good guys in the backcourt that can defend and block shots, score when they need to. But that three-headed monster, being able to get to the basket with not just two guys, but three guys, it just takes you over the top. It kind of reminds you of the Houston team where, they have three guys that can really, really score and get to the paint. So that's my team of the week, Texas, 9-1, first in the Big 12.
My team of the week has started 3-0 in SEC play for the first time since 1986-87. And when Nate Oates went from Buffalo to this school, you just had a sense that he was going to be able to get this program heading to great heights. And they're doing that. It's Alabama. Yeah. Alabama, a younger team that's relying on some younger players. It took them a little bit of time. I thought out in the Maui Invitational, they were not who they are now. Well, they have found it.
Yeah.
They have found it. And they've got a Villanova transfer in Javon Quinterly who's playing at a high level. But he misses their game, Demetris. Yeah. Earlier this week against Florida, he misses the game. So you're sitting there saying, Quinterly's been so impressive. He's been one of the best guards in the SEC. How are they going to be able to replace his scoring? How are they going to be able to put it all together? Well, what happens off the bench? Keon Ellis, James Rojas, guys that were averaging 4 or 5 points per game, both score in double figures. Alabama gets 5 guys in double figures. They win over Florida. It was their first home win over the Gators since 2006. Could Alabama be the best team in the SEC? They could be. In a year where Kentucky's down, in a year where I don't know what to make of this league in a lot of ways. I know what to make of Alabama. They got John Petty. They've got Shackelford. This team is deep. They are deep. When you lose a player like Quinterly and you see 2 younger guys take on a responsibility and deliver on that, that to me is a well-coached team. They know who they are. They accept their roles. Alabama's the real deal. I'm buying in the Crimson Tide to win the national championship game in college football, and I'm buying in the Crimson Tide.
What?
What, you have Ohio State winning?
The national championship game?
In football.
I'm like, I thought you said Alabama.
In football, you gotta, I was getting through my point. Don't be shocked now.
I'm sorry. I thought you bumped your head. Boy, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Like I'm wearing a Browns hat?
But Alabama, they play NBA basketball. Like you said, they're young. They shoot threes. They get layups. They get to the free throw line. They play small, 5 out. Give each other space to play one-on-one basketball. They have a good mix. They have a bunch of veteran guards, bigs, and they have a bunch of young guards who are getting taught by this veteran leadership led by Herbert Jones. He has leadership skills. He has toughness. You mentioned Shackelford and Quirley. They have a bright future. These 2 young kids are going to be really, really good for this Alabama team. They're first in the SEC, which is rare. That's very, very rare. But so far, so good. I'm happy for Nate Oates and this young team. They have a bright future.
They do. They do have a bright future. I did not mean to scare you.
I'm like, wait.
I did not mean to scare you. But I like Alabama football in the national title game. I think that Alabama hoops could be a Sweet 16 type team.
I love Alabama football. It's like watching greatness. Their second and third unit can be the first unit on any team in the country. I love Nick Saban, man.
Let's go to player of the week. Who you got, D?
I got Cade Cunningham. This freshman is outstanding.
I'm shocked.
Even though they lost last week to West Virginia, this kid still had 25 points and 9 rebounds. He's a great rebounder, solid passer. He leads the team in scoring, and he's not selfish. He plays the right way. I really, really like him. I think he's the best point guard in college basketball. I think the next best point guard is the kid Suggs from Gonzaga, but Cunningham is really, really special. He can play. I think he can play the 1, 2, and 3 at the next level. To see what he's doing with this team as a freshman is impressive.
Yeah, and it's why he's in discussion to go number 1 in the NBA draft, and we'll be hovering right around there. Cade Cunningham's been fantastic. It's a damn shame that Oklahoma State isn't eligible for the NCAA tournament. It's wrong. I never understand punishing kids for things that they had nothing to do with. It'll never be something that agrees with me, while other programs seemingly either put themselves on probation, which is just a flat-out joke, or don't end up getting the penalty that other schools get, which at times the standards aren't there. So I feel bad for Cade Cunningham in Oklahoma State, but I have learned everything I need to know about Cade Cunningham, that he stayed committed to mine, that he did not leave. He didn't transfer. They're not eligible for the postseason, and he stayed with Oklahoma State. He bet on the Cowboys. He bet on Mike Boyden. I love that. I love that about him.
His brother is like the coach, right? His brother is like one of the coaches or teammates.
Well, yeah. There's ties there. But look, you're told that you can't play in March Madness. If you're going to play college basketball, that's why you're playing.
Yeah.
And now he doesn't have that.
Right, and it's kind of like the breath of fresh air where you have to say, you know what, you guys are not going to play in the NCAA tournament, but I still want you to go out and get 20. So it's kind of like, a positive thing for Cunningham because he knows that he's only going to be there for a couple of months. So that has to be a great feeling.
My player of the week.
Who you got?
We're going to go out to Omaha, to Creighton. Damian Jefferson, the senior forward, tested the NBA draft waters. The thought was that he wasn't an NBA-ready player, wasn't going to get drafted, high, might have gotten a shot somewhere. But he comes back to Creighton, and I think it was a smart choice, and now it's paying off.
Yeah.
He has been a leader for Creighton here this season. Marcus Zegarowski has not been as good as we thought he might be. There's still plenty of time for him to get to that Zegarowski top player form. But Damian Jefferson at 6'8" is a matchup nightmare. And he just torched Seton Hall on Wednesday night. And over the weekend against Providence, he had 18 points, 8 rebounds, 6 steals. Yeah. This kid defends. He knows who he is, what he needs to do on the floor. And Greg McDermott said this to me last week, Demetris, and you know what this is like playing alongside a guy like this. Mm-hmm. Greg said, Damian knows where he needs to be always, and he always makes the right play. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love about him. His fingerprints are all over a game, but he doesn't have to score the ball to make that happen.
And you know why that happens? Because he plays with energy. The basketball finds whoever has the most energy, and he plays with that great energy from the beginning of the game to the end. This Creighton team has been the most consistent. They haven't lost more than 2 games in a row. They seem like they have a nice flow, nice team camaraderie. You talked about Zegarowski. He could still be Creighton's Mr. Go-To guy, but having a guy like Damian Jefferson who can have a big night is just a plus. They have 5 guys that you can't leave open. They shoot over 35% from the three-point. Oh, no. I think they shoot maybe, 34 or 35% from the three-point line. They take care of the ball, and they can play against anyone. They can break you down one-on-one. They have a pick and roll time when they go in the pick and roll the last 5 minutes of the game, where now you have to pick your poison. They play solid defense. They blew Seton Hall out. They made them look really, 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 really bad last night. And, obviously Seton Hall can't shoot the ball 16% from the three-point line. They didn't really have a lot of assists. They only had 6 assists, even though they got to the free throw line. But you can't allow this team like Creighton to shoot 60% from the 2, 54% from the three-point line, and get 80% from the free throw line. They're hot.
They're hot. Creighton is a Final Four caliber team. They just showed it. They beat Seton Hall by 36. Mm-hmm. That Seton Hall team had won 7 of their last 8 games. And as a star in Sandro Mamukelashvili, it didn't matter. Damian Jefferson went for 19 points in that victory. Creighton is 5-1 in the Big East. And could they be better than Villanova? I don't know if we're ready to say that, but they're right there. There's not as big of a gap as people thought between those two teams.
They're a great matchup. That game against Villanova, I think I'm not saying they're going to win and beat Villanova. I'm saying that they have a matchup problem. I think they're going to be a very, very tough matchup because they have 5 guys that can shoot the ball, and any of those guys can have a 20-point game, 15-point game. It doesn't always have to be a Zagorowski or a Damian Jefferson. So, we'll see.
Yes, we will. Last but not least, Saturday night, 8 o'clock, ESPN2. It's the renewal of the longtime rivalry. Georgetown, Syracuse. It just says Big East basketball, even though Syracuse is in the ACC. It's always fun when these two teams tangle. And the Hoyas got the best of the Orange last year. It's been very close here recently. Georgetown is rebuilding this year. Syracuse needs to bounce back from a home loss to Pittsburgh. What do you think of the status of the Orange? And tell me your best Syracuse-Georgetown moment/memory.
Well, Syracuse losing to Pitt an 18-point lead yesterday is unacceptable. They played well in the first half, forcing Pitt to shoot only 21% from the three-point line. But it seemed like Pitt went into the locker room, came out of halftime and said, you know what? We're going to crash every single board and give ourselves second chance opportunities. They had 20 offensive rebounds. I think the Syracuse is 9. They forced Syracuse to take tough shots. Even though we had, and I say we because that's, I went there, but they had some good shots, but they just didn't hit. Losing Quincy Guerrier, which has been their best player in these past couple of games, and their best rebounder, he got into foul trouble. He only played 16, 17 minutes last night. So I'm still thinking about who's going to be Syracuse's main guy. Is it going to be Allen Griffin, Buddy Boeheim? Can Quincy Guerrier continue to play and be that double-double machine like he has been? But this Georgetown game is, for us as Cuse Nation, it's like a championship game. It's a rivalry game. Even though there's not going to be a lot of fans, the tension is going to be there. I expect Syracuse to bounce back. I also expect Georgetown, after losing 4 games in a row, to come in here and try to beat the Cuse. But I think it's going to be a really, really good. I think it's really going to be a really, really good game. And it's just great for college basketball to see 2 old Big East teams who contributed to college basketball throughout the years. And it's going to be fun to watch. I'm happy that I'm going to be there with doing my thing with Brian Higgins.
I'm looking forward to catching that. I'm looking forward to catching that quite a bit. Do you have a best Syracuse-Georgetown memory?
Yes, I do. My senior year, we're playing Georgetown. Jeff Green, Roy Hibbert, they're top 5 in the country. My senior day, we beat Georgetown at home. I wasn't going to leave the Carrier Dome with a loss, not just a loss, but a loss to Georgetown. I couldn't have that on my heart. So we ended up beating a top 5 team in Georgetown, and it was the sweetest victory of my senior year, leaving the Dome with the win, beating our cross-the-state rival in Georgetown. But it's just a battle from the 2 coaches. John Thompson passed a couple of weeks ago, great coach. Him and Coach Boeheim has had great rivalry, and the players, you can, like I said, you can just feel the tension. You can smell the popcorn. It's just something about us seeing that Georgetown across their chest and them seeing the Syracuse across our chest. It's just a great thing to be a part of, and I'm happy to be able to even talk about college basketball and mentioning Georgetown and Syracuse. So I'm excited for Saturday. I know I'm going to have my popcorn ready.
Yeah, the Hoyas have started games so well. They've been a great team in the first half, and that's a great story, by the way. They have started games well. They have not had an alpha down the stretch in games. Javon Blair and Jamarco Pickett, the 2 seniors, are leading the way, but they have not been able to lead the way down the stretch in games. Dante Harris has been an impressive freshman. Georgetown needs to get their recruiting class next year where they have Ryan Mutombo,
Yeah.
They have Muhammad coming in as well, Aminu Muhammad.
Yeah.
This Georgetown program needs that recruiting class to be the key to the puzzle. I mean, Patrick Ewing is in his 4th year. It has not gone the way he's wanted it to, and they have had a mighty time trying to close games out.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens Saturday.
And I'm pretty sure this Georgetown team is going to be better. You know, losing a lot of transfers from last year, a lot of stuff happened off the court last year. Going into this year with the COVID stuff, losing last 4 games in a row, so the confidence is not there. But I expect them to be up there in the rankings, you know, in the next years to come.
Yeah, we'll see. That this is a program that needs to get it going, and next year will be a critical year for them. This one, a rebuilding one. Hey, at the Field of 68, folks, we're with you every single day. The feed is loaded. In fact, I'm taking a look at it right now in terms of what we got, and we're now on the Locker Room app after games. But Jeff Greer just put out Floyd Street's finest. So we talked a little Louisville. He talked with Ryan McMahon about Chris Mack, Rick Pitino, David Padgett. We've got a Villanova podcast that's out there about Jeremiah Robinson Earl today. We've got AJ Guyton with Indiana Talk. Hoosiers are solid. How good are they? We'll continue to find out. But, man, they've got some guys with Trace Jackson Davis and Rich Thompson. I mean, that's a good, solid team. Baylor as well. So, hey, download, subscribe at the Field of 68 on iTunes, on YouTube. We're all over it, and we are with you every week on Demetris and a Splash of Fanta. Thanks to our producer, Pranav. Thanks to Demetris Nichols. Thanks to ESPN Seth Greenberg. So long, everybody. I'm John Fanta. Enjoy your weekend of college hoops.